All right, great. So I'd like to introduce our next moderator, June Cao. She's the Executive Director of ICASU. Let's just give a round of applause actually to ICASU for all of their hard work in helping us get you all here, helping us organize this summit. So thank you to ICASU, and I will hand it off to June.
Thank you, Jason, for that introduction. Before we go into the panel, I just want to go briefly over what ICASU does and the history a bit about ICASU. And so ICASU started in about 1978, so that's like about 35 years with its annual conference. This year it's going to be, well, this coming year it'll be at Columbia University in the spring 2013. But along with that long history, we recently became a nonprofit in 2008. We are a student-run organization, recent grads as well as current students. But let me go into our mission. And so our mission statement is to inspire, educate, and empower students who are interested in Asian American and Pacific Islander issues. And what we try to do in these coming years is we have multiple programs that we have going on. With advocacy, we're focusing on the Asian American Study Initiative. And so what we've been doing so far is, for example, recently we had a meetup in New York City where a couple of students who are interested in the Asian American Studies Initiative, in which they're trying to bring it on their campus, they came together, talked about what they're doing and how they can get a better approach, whether to find resources or even get in contact with certain professors and whatnot. Along with that idea, we are still going to have more meetups. For example, be on the lookout for the DC meetup very soon. And along with that idea, we also are starting up the National Asian American Studies Honor Society, in which we hope to gather up a stronger network for the Asian American Studies programs. And along with the lines of meeting up with other students, not only do we focus on the Asian American Studies Initiative, during the fall, we have a campus fall tour, which we stop in certain cities and certain schools, and we hope to gather up students in that area to get them to meet up for the first time. A lot of times when we're working on our own campuses, we don't get that chance to meet someone from a different campus who probably is doing just the great amount of work that we're doing, and we would like to, share insights, what we're doing on our campus, and maybe ideas that can be thrown around. And so we hope that comes across when we do these campus fall tours. So, and along with that, we also are always trying to engage our membership. We're going to start up a membership program very soon, coming up during the summer. And this is a way for us to give you discounts or resources that you might not already know about. And if you ever want to be more engaged with ICASU, definitely check out our Campus Ambassador program to be an ambassador for your school. I have a couple from last year's here in the audience, and as well as our internship program where you can be more hands-on with ICASU and be on one of the teams that we have on national board. So with further ado, I would like to have our guest panelists here to really talk about how they trailblaze their way through college. So let us have an introduction. So about 2 or 3.
Hi everybody, my name is Harpreet Singh Bhatt. I'm a student from California State University, Fullerton. This upcoming year I will be a director representing the College of Engineering and Computer Science on the Associated Students Incorporated, the student body at California State University, Fullerton, and representing 36,000 students, not only in our school but also on statewide issues and also national issues. I will also be serving as Executive VP for my finance club and encouraging students, helping out students with their studies and their exams and stuff. More than anything, this upcoming year I'll be more involved with the California State Student Association, which represents 440,000 students all across California, and just working and representing them on statewide issues, meeting up regularly with assembly members, our state senators, and also voicing our opinion on the national level. So I'll be doing that kind of stuff. So.
My name is Rudy, and I'm a rising junior at Amherst College in Western Massachusetts. I'm a Black Studies and History major, and hopefully I'll be able to get a 5-college certificate in Asian Pacific American Studies. This summer, I'm currently a fellow at the Chinese Progressive Association in San Francisco's Chinatown, and we work on a lot of youth and labor organizing programs dealing with workers' rights and similar issues in Chinatown.
Hi everyone, my name is Justin Huang. I'm a rising senior at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I was raised in North Carolina with barbecue, seersucker shorts, Southern bells, and hospitality. It's a pretty different world, but I've been really involved with the AAPI community since I was really young, and had the fortunate privilege for my parents to take me to Chinese school on Saturdays, and I'm involved with the Asian Students Association, and I'm currently serving as the Director of Development for a nonprofit organization called REACH, which is empowering Asian American students in particularly in education initiatives globally and locally.
That's good. All right. Good morning, everyone. This is awesome. Really excited to be in DC, and thanks to AAPI for hosting this awesome event, for White House for letting us be here. My name is Michael Sadapour. I'm a senior at the University of Florida. Go Gators! Right now, I'm an economics major, and I have the opportunity to be one of the interns with OCA this summer, and I've been placed with the Office of Management and Budget. At the University of Florida, I just finished my term as president of the Asian American Student Union, and in the coming year, I will be the Executive Assistant Director for our Asian American Heritage Month, known as Asian Kaleidoscope Month. And I also have had various campus opportunities, such as serving on student government, and also, well, it's in the bio, so I think that's enough. But I'm really excited to be here and to be with all these panelists.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Kristen Surla. I am a student at Loyola University Chicago, and so definitely repping the Midwest, so showing some love to my Midwestern people out there. Good to know you're in the room. I am an English and Sociology major, minoring in Women and Gender Studies, and I'm going to be a senior at Loyola. And I guess in my involvement, I've been very intentional in both being involved in initiatives that focus on AAPI issues as well as other things in the larger university to have that representation. So I started off as a mentor for first-year minority or first-generation college students at Loyola University. It's called the Students Together Are Reaching Success program, and I've been involved with that for 4 years. I'm going to be the president of the Council of Pan-Asian Americans, which hosts various different initiatives, one of which I co-founded last year, which is called Project Voice, which is an initiative to have workshops about what it means to be Asian American at Loyola University, where we don't have centralized resources and support for Asian American students, such as like an Asian American Studies program. So currently with that, we're hosting workshops and starting discussions on that. Within COPA, I also oversee the council, which is all the Pan-Asian American organizations on campus, as well as a women's initiative that hopefully will be launching this year to empower young Asian American women leaders, as well as an alumni network. In addition to that, I do research on undocumented student experiences in Jesuit colleges and universities, and I guess that's it for now.
Well, okay, so now we know what you do. I wanted to go a little deeper into why. So when and what sparked your passion to be involved with our community?
I immigrated to the United States when I had like about 2 months left in my 6th grade year. So coming to the States at the age of 11, I had very little knowledge of like what the U.S. is, because coming from India, it was a total culture change. So it took me some while through high school, getting up to date, catching up on the pop culture and stuff, and kind of understanding what people are talking about and stuff. But at the same time, I had this thing that I wanted to prove to people that despite the fact that I came here at 11 and was totally new to the country, that I can go ahead and learn things and then go ahead and represent people and just go ahead and do things that other people thought that I couldn't. For example, people always said that, hey, I couldn't play football because I wore a turban. Well, I played 4 years of football in high school. Just things like that. And then doing that in my senior year, I found out that I needed to take one more elective course in order to qualify for 4 year, to get my credits in. And I ended up taking speech and debate my final year. And when I started looking up these issues and these political issues and just researching and debating with other high schoolers and stuff, and it really sparked this thing in me that, hey, I really want to be educated about this stuff. And not only that, I would also really, surprise me that not a lot of people know about it. Many of these issues, like whenever you talk about the healthcare bill or the Affordable Health Care Act, not a lot of people know what it's all about. Not a lot of people know, and when you are not informed about certain things, then you cannot make those, those suggestions and those discussions and stuff, and we're not really practicing democracy. So that's what really forced me to go ahead and educate myself and then share with other students, spark discussions so people are more educated, more involved. And in the past few years that I've been at my universities, that's the thing I've done, and that's what keeps me going and further and further as I continue my college career.
My political involvement came largely as a result of what I was learning academically. The Black Studies department at Amherst College is amazing in the materials and the resources that it provides for you to really start thinking critically about issues in society, about communities, and about who we are. I guess I came to college and I was kind of lost about who I was searching for identity like so many Asian American students. And I was really, really lucky to have taken Intro to Black Studies my second semester of my freshman year, because that was an eye-opening experience in how it allowed me to start reflecting critically about my own experiences, about my own privilege growing up, my privileges as a college student, and how I can channel those resources and use my experiences to best be an asset to the communities that the Chinese immigrant community that I am a product of. So that's something, my community is definitely an inspiration for me to keep working and keep searching for how I can best use my skills, my unique skills and interests to serve the people that I care about.
I guess for me, growing up in the South was a very unique experience. My parents did a very good job in finding communities for people like myself who are Asian or Asian American for me to plug into. But there were a lot of times at school when it's pretty lonely. You're in this, North Carolina is maybe 2%, 3% Asian, and you go to a school where a lot of people come from old money, or they come from pretty conservative backgrounds. And growing up, I didn't even know I was Asian. People thought I was Mexican, so I thought I was Mexican, right? And so it was a really interesting kind of dynamic growing up, because as you develop that kind of experience and your parents sort of push you to learn about who you are yourself, you learn some things from everybody else. And I think that my journey through the education system and seeing that there are a lot of other students who come from places like they're the only Asian student in all of Bertie County, and they come to University of North Carolina and they see all these other Asian students, like they don't know what to do. They've never seen any other Asian people before, right? So and it's one of those types of experiences where you realize that it's important that people are working together, that people come together. And I really made that my mission when I entered college. I knew I was going to be involved in the AAPI community, and I knew I was going to be involved in my studies, and perhaps stereotypically I went into science, but it's something I'd been good at, and bringing things together like the education and the AAPI community in this new nonprofit organization we started in North Carolina called REACH was something that was that framed what I was trying to do very well. And recently I left the Asian Students Association to pursue a position in the student government where, in a place where the Asian population is never really represented because we have a very strong academic track record at Carolina. Why, does the administration not have any recruitment initiatives? Why do they not have any Asian student success initiatives? And, it's asking those types of questions that, when you have that very good feeling in your stomach when you're like, oh, that's sort of interesting. And then that's something that really you should find that will drive you and drives me is just finding out why.
I think it's very, very interesting that I have the opportunity to be here now because growing up, I don't know, maybe some of you can relate. I think it is a little bit similar to what Justin's saying about growing up in South Carolina. In Florida, there's just a very, very low Asian American population. And so growing up, I never had any community involvement or really too much interaction with other Asian American youth. And so I feel that when I was growing up and in school, I was very shy. And then as time went on, I think it was through our leadership class that we had to take in high school that it kind of encouraged me to be more extroverted or try to be more extroverted. And also that the fact that I think people misunderstand when you're quiet sometimes. They don't realize that you're shy when you're growing up. They think that you don't like them or that you think you're better. Or it's just a lot of misconstrued notions that occur when you're young. And so I realized that and I was cognizant of that, and I said that, why can't I try to put myself out of my comfort zone and talk to people I don't know because I think we would get along. And then when I went to UF, I'm an only child, so I didn't have any other siblings who went to college before me who knew about organizations or what kind of things you can get involved with in college. I just knew that there was school. And so it was almost by chance that I walked into an event for our Asian American Student Union at the beginning of the school year. We have an assembly. It tracks roughly 1,600 students. And I went in, and I had no idea what was going on. A lot of dancing and skits. I had no idea how big dance was in the Asian American community at the time. And it's just been such an awesome, wonderful experience. But I think that what I got from that is similar to what, I really like what Director Fan said in the previous panel, is whenever you walk into the room, I think that you are a leader to an extent because you represent people beyond yourselves. You represent everybody else. And so leadership is not just a title or a line on a resume. We are constantly, through our interactions, affecting each other on a conscious and subconscious level. Me sitting next to Justin and Kristen, we're affecting each other in some way. And I think that if you're aware of that and how how every action that you take, every word that you say has an effect on the people around you, whether or not they realize it, I think that's really powerful. And I think that motivates me a lot because at the end of the day, whether or not I ever realize this effect, my personal goal is that I make other people's day better.
Okay, my, I guess, involvement or leadership is really tied to this idea of identity. Growing up in the Midwest, I pretty much was one of very few Asian Americans in my hometown too, so I had to really explore my identity and what that meant for me in different ways. I grew up in a very diverse, racially and socioeconomically hometown, a lot of Black and Latino communities. So in a way, I felt like I could develop my identity as a person of color. But then when I went to college, which Loyola University is a very predominantly white institution, very privileged, and I feel like when I got there, I got connected to the Department of Student Diversity and Multicultural Affairs, which really helped me understand and unpack my identities and what that meant for me. So when I think about my leadership, I really do think of education and my experience at college, because while we're there to learn and get our degrees and everything, a big part of me and my leadership and my involvement is that not only in college do we go to learn inside the classroom, but we we go to learn outside of the classroom and do a little bit of this unlearning piece about what it means to be a leader, or what it means to be Asian American, and what it means to be a woman. I suppose in developing and understanding that, I was able to take that further and think about my personal AAPI identity. And something that we talk about in Project Voice a lot is that growing up, you're not really taught to be Asian American. You're taught to be Filipino American or Chinese American or Japanese American. And Asian American is a very created and political identity. And so to develop your consciousness around that and what it means for me and how I can work to rewrite that narrative and find that empowerment within myself is kind of what keeps me motivated.
And going off of that, this is a question I asked my campus ambassadors just this past semester. What's an issue that you care about, and have you found a way to address it on your campus? If not, what's in your way and what's stopping you?
I think one issue, I could say it in one word, it's apathy. Our university, the university that I attend, has 37,000 students, and it's one of the largest universities in California. And whenever we have elections, student body elections, our turnout, voter turnout, is somewhere between 5 to 10%. Now, these student leaders that are elected are our representatives for the university, the face of the university, and are the ones that advocate for the students at the state level. And then why are students not getting involved? This question always comes up to me as, why are students so apathetic to the notion? The easy way to students answer that is, hey, I just want to come here, get my education, join a couple of frats and sororities, and then jam out and get a job. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, that's what we're there for. But just the point that you don't even show up to vote for your student representatives shows how much you care about representation beyond just a university. So I think that's one of the main issues that I really am focusing on. This past year, a bunch of students organized a Social Justice Summit, and the whole idea was looking beyond apathy. We had about 1,000 people attend, and we focused on issues that we hear daily in news, or social issues such as LGBT rights, immigration, illegal immigration, stuff like that we often hear in news. And just kind of like talked on that. We had speakers come in and talk about it, inform people, not really give them bias on one side or the other, but give them the information so they can make decisions on their own. And we plan to do more of that in the future, create more events, create more places where students can get together, talk about issues, have dialogues, because I think sometimes it's easier to kind of talk and have a dialogue with your peers versus having these lecturers come in or your professors come in and give a lecture on certain things. So it has to be a daily thing, I believe, in order for us to be more empathetic to situations and issues and be more active. Because it's not a once in a while, let's get together like in DC now. This is a great event. We're all together here. We're talking about it. Yes, we need to do something for the Asian Americans and then the Pacific Islanders. But what are we going to do beyond this? How are we going to take this back to our universities? How are we going to take this back to our communities and then spread that amongst them? Many of our community members are apathetic. Many of them are immigrants that come from other countries. Yeah, they have small businesses. They think their lives are great, their communities are doing great, and that's enough. No, we need to go beyond that. We need to integrate with other communities, the Latino communities, the Indian communities. We need to integrate, have this exchange of ideas, have this exchange of information, and that's the way we educate ourselves. And that's the way that stereotypes are going to die out. That's the way discrimination is going to be limited, is when people are educated. So I think the whole basis of discrimination, stereotypes, and students not being active is apathy, because it takes an extra step, that initiative. Hey, the after-school meetings have to stay back another hour. But if we do really want to make a difference, and if we do think that our kids shouldn't have to go through the stereotypes, our kids shouldn't have to go through the discrimination, I think we need to start taking those steps going into the future. So apathy, I think, definitely is a key issue.
One Some of the issues that I've noticed with student engagement on campuses is very similar to what you've already brought up. I think there's definitely disengagement with the community on a lot of college campuses. And I come from a private liberal arts college in small town Massachusetts. We only have 1,700 students. And I think right now we only have about 30% students of color as a result of an intense diversity recruitment plan from a few years ago. So overall, my campus still normalizes whiteness, heterosexuality. It's, in many ways, there's so many remnants of like the old white boys club that this school used to be. And so student organizing on my campus is particularly difficult because it's hard to get students to start thinking about issues beyond the surface level. Because there's so many students who work in direct services, people who are willing to volunteer their time to go tutoring, to work in hospitals, but it's hard sometimes when so many of us come from more privileged backgrounds to start questioning, so why is this school poorer than the other one? To start like looking for deeper, for the root reasons, and to start addressing these problems at the roots. And that's when organizing comes in, that's when a lot of like critical self-reflection comes in. And I think like that's hard to come about when the campus is not supporting you to do things like that. So on my campus, I've mostly tried to do work with recruiting more diverse faculty and staff. Because right now we only have about one Asian American Studies class per semester. There's usually also no classes offered on Latino or Chicano studies. So there's a huge gap missing in terms of education coming in to step in and encourage students to start thinking critically. So I think that's something that needs to be done to inspire critical engagement with the community through education.
For me, I think one of the really big issues that I want to fight for is educational equality. At a medium-sized public institution, Carolina has great diversity initiatives, has all sorts of centers for getting students connected with resources, and they really have some sort of, they've really made it a point to show that they care about the diversity. But with that, it's sort of very surface level in my opinion. It's shown that, we have a whole bunch of different faces at the school, and that's sort of what diversity looks like to everybody else. But on a deeper level, especially for the Asian American community, I've noticed that my school particularly, and probably at many other institutions where Asian Americans seem to succeed in the classroom, there are no real initiatives there beyond getting Asian students in the door. And that's maybe accepting them into some seats in their university, but that's really it. Establishing things like student success programs. When you have a very diverse student body, you have a very diverse range of experiences and especially educational levels. The education, like high school education in North Carolina, ranges from very, very poor rural universities or high schools all the way up to very well-funded public boarding schools that where students get to do research at Duke University. But and that great disparity just within the North Carolina and within the AAPI community creates a really interesting and severe divide, in my opinion. And so the establishment of this working towards creating an equal playing field, especially for students who come into a great university, is going to be very important for especially our community, and make sure that we show that we can produce great global leaders as well.
I think that two of the things that are issues that I've noticed or we've tried to work on together during my time at UF would, one, have to be resources. So resources being Asian American Studies, an Asian American Studies, or an Asian American Center, an APIA director, an Association of Asian Alumni, those types of things. And to give you a little bit background about the University of Florida, it's one of the largest public land-grant universities in the nation at approximately 50,000 students. And so essentially what you're dealing with is a small city, right? And with that comes a lot of opportunities, but also challenges. For example, most of the initiatives that we've had at our campus pertain to Asian American issues, whether that was petitioning for Asian American Studies courses we offered, whether that was advocating for physical space for Asian American students to be on the campus. None of these were driven by the university or by administration. All of them were student-led initiatives. And so I think it goes to show two things. One is that in a real-life context, it is very applicable, because when you're dealing with large bureaucracies, when they want to, they can drag their feet as long as they want, and they can wait you out, because you're only there for approximately 4 years, maybe a little bit longer. And so that's the thing. You have a shelf life of 4 years, and if they don't want to do something, wait the people out, they'll be gone, and there's no one to do it. But if they want to do something, like, I don't know, erect 3 statues of famous athletes on our campus, or, so, and I love Gator football, but I'm just saying, you know, they can make things happen in an instant. And so what does that show? It shows that I think that to a degree, you have to engage and work within the system. You need to, you know, you have 3 options if you find the system to be dirty and repulsive, which I happen to. You can either completely disengage, you can engage it and become part of the system, or you can engage it with a purpose while trying to advance what you believe are the community's objectives. And so in the case of let's say, the Association of Asian Alumni, which we just got official recognition for at UF 2 years ago. It's the first of its kind in Florida, possibly Southeast. A lot of times I think it's work and opportunity kind of meeting each other at a nice intersection and trying to get support from lots of different people in different areas. And sometimes it's a timing thing too. And so that's why it's important to realize that while you could be waited out, another really important thing to work on is mentorship and transferring the knowledge that you gain over the 4 years to the younger students. And so at UF, we have something called the Freshman Leadership Program, where each freshman, if they're interested, gets 2 upperclassmen mentors. And I think it's been really critical to helping the organization advance in the past few years, because I think that, let's say, you know, from your angle, if you start here at the beginning of your college time and you end up here, if you don't share what you've picked up, and all of you may not realize how much you know, is that if you don't share that, then the next people, they start the same thing. It's just a cyclical process, and you might be fighting the same battles for Asian American Studies over and over again. But if you share it, then the next group will start where you ended, and then you'll come back, you know, as an alumni 5 years, and you won't even recognize it. You'll be amazed. But I think you have to have like the long field view too, and I think that ties into what he was saying about apathy. The second thing that I wanted to hit on is like student government, or just like government in general, because at UF, our student government is it's considered one of the most powerful student governments around, just because by sheer number, 50,000 students, by budget, $17 million, that goes to all the organizations. The students actually have a lot of power and influence at the university. But still, voter turnout is abysmally and pathetically low at somewhere around, it hovers around 20%. There's a very entrenched political system. It's essentially a one-party system. And so that makes it really difficult, because people have the expectation that, one, they don't see how student government benefits them. They don't see how, if they vote for if they were to vote for an alternative, they don't see how that would make a difference. And they don't see how the party in power does anything for them or will change. And that's not to say they don't do anything, but there is a meritorious point to say that they don't do as much as they could be doing. But I would not underestimate the value of one person who is committed to their cause working hard. Because in the past spring, my very, very good friend actually ran for student body president against kind of like the main party. And it was the closest election in the past, like, so close to winning. It was a margin of 100 votes, or 0.27%. So it was 50.73 to 49.27%. That's how close it was. The voter turnout was historically high. It was over 10,000, which hadn't happened in years, because the voter turnout, as I said, is historically low. And so I think it's, sometimes it's not just about winning, but in this arena, but it's about, as Director Fan said again, doing what you think is right for that reason alone. And at the end of the day, saying that you tried your best, because you are setting an example for other people.
So I feel like I'm echoing a lot what my peers said here, but definitely apathy is something that we all feel at our own individual college campuses, because I feel like apathy is, a big issue that dips into and has a lot of basis in things such as immigration, education, bullying, racial discrimination, or even the little daily microaggressions, the misconceptions, assumptions, stereotypes that we see on the day-to-day. I think that in combating apathy and trying to understand why this exists and how we can work against it is really powerful for me. Something that I see at Loyola University a lot is that, and I'm not sure, maybe a lot of you could relate to this too, is that there's so much strength and power in the cultural organizations, but when it comes to being more civically engaged or political or voicing an opinion, it's not there as much. So how do we use the spaces that we've created on our college campuses to have a voice, to send a message, to be intentional with, the fashion shows that we put up, the cultural dances, things like that? I think that having the basis in those student organizations which have been created and run for us and by us is really a big way that we can start to combat that apathy. And going off of that as well, it's really important to find your voice and to send that message, and what do you want your audience to know? I keep drawing back upon Project Voice, which is the initiative that I helped start at Loyola, to talk about what it means to not have an Asian American Studies program. But how we kind of frame that initiative is that we don't view it as an organization. For me, how we kind of combat apathy and make that stance sustainable is don't create organizations, start movements, start something that is going to carry on after you graduate. Yeah.
So I have one more question until we turn it over to Q&A, but if the panelists can keep it to 2 to 3 sentences, that would be great. My question is, what is your next step in your community and what your work?
2 to 3. It's hard to keep it that short, but I'll try. I think, the next step is definitely for me, it's opening up dialogue among students and amongst my community members, and just having them, providing them with information, providing them with a resource, so they can actually act. They can be informed and take part in the political process, be aware of the social issues, so they can make decisions. I think that's the most important thing, because that's the one thing I think my community lacks, is they're not really up to date on political events or the social issues, and then they kind of aren't detached from the hit thing that's going on. So I just want to be that resource to them, to the younger kids and the younger generations to follow, so they have somebody that they can go to, and definitely that just be a resource and an outlet for people, so they can integrate themselves and be more involved in society and political events.
Something that I think would be important to address is not just building communities, but also building cross-community, cross-cultural, cross-racial coalitions. I think it's really important for all of us, to start imagining ourselves as not just members of our own communities, but those that are related to us, to start thinking that even though I'm an Asian American woman, it matters to me that young black men are being tracked into the prison system instead of higher education, that even though I'm a college student, it matters to me that workers in Chinatown are being exploited for their wages, because that's a part of my identity too. So I think it'll be essential to start building that dialogue, that understanding, because that's where our power lies.
For me, my next step is preparing for a course that I'm actually teaching in the spring. I'm teaching a course on Asian American identity in the spring, and it's something that, if you have an opportunity to do, I really encourage you to do it. And what that allows you to do is you get a different kind of appeal in a student. You get a little bit more power, if you will, for students to listen to you and for students to follow you. And I think that's really important, is intellectualizing our experiences, not so much just having a group therapy session and sitting around hot pot, but instead actually seeing how that affects your daily life, how historically our experiences are shaping this sort of meta-narrative that all of us are sort of going to have. And I think that's a really important step that students sometimes don't take on the experience for understanding their own identity.
Okay. I believe in the principle of low-hanging fruit. I believe that there are a lot of opportunities out there that it just needs at least one person to be the first person to take that step out there and to lead it. I believe that time is our scarcest resource, and I think that that's why we should always be intentional and purposeful in every action that we do and how we spend our time, because things that are scarce are precious. That's what makes them precious, and time is the most finite thing of all. And I think that with elections coming up in November, yes, we need to vote. But we also need to talk to our friends and ask and answer the question, why do we need to vote? Why do we need to build bridges with other communities? These are important things. We know them to be important. But in your heart, why does it matter to you? And then I think the other thing is to remember the history and heritage of the past and where we come from. The 4th of July was 2 days ago, and I had the opportunity to go with some of the other interns to see the Capitol parade. And so we walked by the Archives building, and if you've seen the Archives building, there are 2 statues on each side of the building, and they have inscriptions on the bottom. And on one of them it says, the heritage of the past is a seed that brings forth the harvest of the future. And I believe that to be true. I believe that everything that your families and parents have done, my family and parents have done, have allowed us to be where we are today. And I think that we occupy a very, very unique point in history. I think that technology is amazing, it's almost magical, and that this is going to be a point, it's such a point of high optimism. A lot of you in the room believe that one day there could be an Asian American president, an Asian American female president. And we believe it, and we believe it, we think it's possible. And so it's gonna happen, it's probably gonna happen in your lifetime, and when they write the history books, they're gonna look back and say that this was a time of great change. This is a time when lots of things were happening. And you're a part of it. You're an active author of history. And you can choose, do you want to be passive and an observer and a spectator of history, or do you want to do whatever you can every day to help write that narrative? And I believe that you can, and I believe that you will if you want to.
The next steps for me, I guess, going off of that as well, it is election year. So we really do have the privilege and opportunity to engage in this national conversation about what the needs of our community are and how we can work to influence that. Something that I'm starting to organize now through my networks in Chicago, as well as my internship with the Asian American Institute in Chicago, is kind of like a Chicago-wide election rally, voter registration rally. So you Midwesterners that are in the room, come connect with me afterwards. But what we really want to do with that is we want to garner excitement over what it means to be Asian American and the power of our voice. Like Michael was just saying, we need to rewrite the narrative. We need to really deconstruct this single story of what an Asian American is, that we're these model minorities, high achieving, and that we don't need resources and support, because the truth is that we do. And unless we speak out and speak up, that's not going to happen. So definitely going into this fall, talking about the election, encouraging you all to vote, and encouraging you all to bring that back to your campuses as well.
So those were the longest 2 to 3 sentences that I've ever heard. So we're going to go into our Q&A. So for those who are online streaming this, we didn't forget you. Unfortunately, I do not have a smartphone with data plan, but I do have one of my national board members who does have a question for me prepared. But before I go with this question, does anyone in the audience have any questions? So I see one hand. Oh, okay, more than one hand. So in the meanwhile, I guess I could start with this. So they're setting up. So this is a Twitter question from Priyan B. How can we get students, cultural organizations on college campuses to be better engaged with the API communities? Any of you take it?
Mr. President.
How do we get organizations on campus to be more involved in
Engaged.
the cultural?
Like, so what have you done on your own campuses that is like a tactic or like, you know, a tip that you could probably give out?
To get Asian American students involved in Asian American organizations?
With their, yes,
Oh, okay.
their cultural organizations.
Sorry, the question was a little confusing. But no, I think that's a good point. Is that a lot of times, I think that first of all, the beginning of the year is the most critical time because that's when you have a lot of freshmen coming in. You have a lot of events that people have more free time. Just remember when you were a freshman, or if you are a freshman, what attracted you to certain events? Why did you go to the events that you chose to go to? And then always keep that in mind when you're trying to like plan events, if it's an event planning in the beginning of the year because it's an organization. And then I think also is that it's the people that makes it a home. The organization is just a name. The organization can change, but the reason I love my time with the Asian American Student Union and my time at the University of Florida is because of friends I made. The reason I like my OCA internship, I mean the work is fun, but like it's the people. I really like them. And I think that that's what it has to be. Every opportunity, whether if you're quieter and more introverted or if you are more extroverted, no matter what, go talk to the person that came to the event for the first time or they meet on campus for the first time through like tabling or advertising and just talk to them. Say, hi, this is my name. I don't think we met before or whatever. Call me maybe. And no, don't say that because they probably won't come back. But no, really, someone always needs to make the first step. And I think that we being in the position of like being the older person or being the one who's around more have the onus on us to be the one who introduces ourselves. Because I think a lot of times you only get one chance. If they have a bad experience, and it already takes a lot for a person who doesn't know anybody to go to an event with like lots of people, and it's very intimidating. And if you don't have a good experience, you're not going to go back. If it wasn't for the fact that on the first meeting that I walked into, that the president at the time for the Asian American Student Union introduced himself to me at the door, said, hey, my name's Philip Chang, what's your name? I said, oh, that's mine. If it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would have gone back. And I think it's the same thing for all of you. There was probably one or a few instances that made a big difference.
Just adding on to what Michael said, I think the other way you can get student cultural organizations more kind of intact with like API communities is, for example, at my school we have this organization called ICA, Association of Intercultural Awareness. And what we do is the student body funds that organization, and we have a lot of different cultural clubs that organize events. And when you organize events, invite your communities, spread the word out at your local community centers and invite people to come and join in. And that way you can, kind of have this engagement of your communities and your cultural clubs on campus. So maybe, kind of reach out to your communities and invite them to these campuses. Because many times we're just like students are organizing things and communities are kind of like left out and there's like two different things going on. And I think maybe when you have these neutral events where students and community members and people can come around and, kind of like have this combination of ideas.
I think to add to that, a very important word that both Michael and Harpreet used is community, and engagement comes from that community. So when you have an organization that is culturally aware or culturally centric, it's very important that when students that join that organization feel that they're connected to it. If we have, let's say, an Asian Students Association, and a whole bunch of Asians show up and they're like, hey, I want to be in this organization. If you don't create that community, there's also no reason for them to be there. Engagement is key, not only at the beginning of the year when you recruit a lot of students and it looks really awesome, your organization is like hundreds of people and we're gonna have all these events, but then as students engage themselves in other activities, it's important for your culturally centric organization as a support group to make sure that those students remain engaged in those activities, but also are still growing as individuals. And that's sort of the responsibility I believe that cultural organizations have as far as engagement goes. Not just the president doing it, not just the cabinet doing it, but everybody who's a part of that organization needs to buy into a concept where this is an important community that we are all supporting together, and it's not just 10 people leading it, but 100 people leading it.
To add on what everybody else has been saying, some concrete examples that I have tried to incorporate in my leadership and cultural organizations at Loyola is to pretty much use what you know, but be intentional about it. So whether it's having a fashion show, for example, that I used earlier, you can use that space to have a discussion about, what does an Asian American look like? What is, whether that's like body image, masculinity or femininity, use those spaces to have those critical conversations. Go into the historical piece because there's reasons why these cultural organizations exist, and really try to explore, what that means. Another thing that I heard at my internship at Asian American Institute during the first 2 weeks is, we Asian Americans, we come together over food. So whether that's a program about Spam and how, well, it has a purpose, and the militarization of countries and why Spam came to exist in those countries, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that everything has a historical connection, and as long as you reflect back to what that means, you can find a lot of empowerment in that and really try to engage your communities over these shared ideas and cultural values.
I guess we're all supposed to speak then. So I'll just tack on really briefly. I don't think it should stop at culture, and that we need to build the cultural into the political. And once we do that, community engagement is inevitable, because Asian American, as it was first created, was a political identity, and culture was a vital piece of that. But in essence, it was a political identity, and we need to start using that political identity to build power in our communities.
So let's take a question from the audience.
Oh, there we go. Hi, my name's Melissa. I'm a previous campus ambassador for AAPI. I'm also the upcoming president for my organization, the Unified Asian American Student Organization at Montclair State. I've been having this frustrating problem that I feel like we've tried a lot of the tactics that you guys mentioned, such as having these discussions during meetings, having these fun events, re-apping them, kind of like really building on our organization. However, my problem is that I really want to connect my community at school to the larger community, and I'm having trouble doing that on top of empathy, and they're kind of just not interested, but I really want to see how I can take a step further and make them more interested and kind of inspire them to kind of do what we do at AAPI and everyone else here. How do you think I can do that, or do you have any examples?
I have a question. What do you mean by greater community?
To kind of join in the AA community instead of just like the campus organization. To kind of just go further outside of it after we graduate, or et cetera, et cetera.
So the one thing that I've noticed about apathetic students is that they want you to bring the community to them. And when you do that, you you give them no excuse but to be involved. For example, you set up, let's say, you want to go to the ICASU conference, make sure that you set up a delegation to go. Ask people, they're not going to come and say, hey, I want to go, how do I go? You should go up to them and be like, hey, do you want to go? I'm giving you the opportunity to go. And, providing opportunities and giving them, asking them directly as, person to person is the best way to engage somebody who's apathetic, because they have to respond to you. And, not in a creepy way, but, you want to be present to receive and give information. Emails are one thing, but if you send, an email every single week, nobody's going to read those emails. If you, have these general body meetings where you tell everybody, hey, we're going to do this week, nobody's going to show up to those if you have them every week. So one thing that the Asian Students Association at Carolina did is we got rid of meetings. And we have one big meeting at the beginning of the year where everybody shows up and they're like, this is on the docket for the year. We got this massive cultural event. We got these great opportunities. And then as events come up, when you plan events, everybody shows up to events. But nobody wants to go to a meeting where you just talk about events. So those are, when you are not doing much at those meetings, then you sort of dilute the meaning of your events if you don't, if people are expecting you to just be talking the whole time.
So I definitely feel you. I think that as student leaders, especially of our organizations, whether they're like politically or socially motivated, it's really frustrating because you're just like, I care about this so much, why don't you care? Why aren't you getting involved? And so I feel like we really, sometimes as student leaders, we need to give ourselves a break. As long as you're able to influence a couple people who will carry on that vision, I think there's a lot of worth in that. Something else that I learned at Asian American Institute, going off what Justin had been saying, is that it really takes these touches, these personal connections with people to get them involved. And thinking about my own leadership, like I really just kind of fell into the things that I got involved in on campus. It really took someone to be like, hey, come to this event. And it's really up to that person at that point whether or not they want to continue. So it's easier to say no to an email or sitting in a meeting than it is to have a face-to-face conversation. By sharing your story, I think is a really good way to bridge that connection. And community organizations are always going to want you. They're always going to want volunteers and people to come in to learn about what kinds of things that they're doing. So I suppose for my advice with that would be to just either volunteer or seek mentors, or like Justin was saying, bring people to school to talk about, the work that they're doing. And even though everybody in your organization might not be interested, as long as there's one or two people, I think that's a good amount.
So one more question, and then we'll be wrapping it up. So I want to say, let's have someone from that side. This side over here, just anyone.
Hi, my name is Janet. I'm from Ramapo College in New Jersey. So my big thing is, I know Michael was talking about resources, to getting resources for the school. My school, not to knock my school, but they really, they're like really proud that they have this API class, but it's taught by a professor who has no interest whatsoever. He was a Russian history professor. He just happened to be Asian, so they figured he'd be awesome for it. So it's like, I really want to like kind of build up that like sector like in our school and be like, like we're pretty cool, like we pretty much make up all of your nursing department, like nursing major, like I'm not a nursing major, but everyone in my club is. So, and it's, it's like, what did you guys do to garner that attention from your student involvement centers and be like, hey, like look at us, like help us out, like what, I guess like what type of things and opportunities do you think would come arise from that?
One example I can give you is when California started facing these budget deficits, and wasn't able to fund the universities the full amount, the universities started increasing our tuitions. And we saw like, I mean, every semester there would be 5-10% increase. So students at a lot of Cal State started like, gathering together and protesting and trying different ways to get the administration's attention towards these issues, because the administration is there to serve the students. If there are no students, there is no administration, there is no college, and so the students are actually like the driving factor. So one thing they did is they kind of camped out outside our president's office for 3 days, and all they wanted was the president to sign a letter saying that he will support the students in this fight and that he will try everything in his power to help the students in any way, shape, or form in tough economic times. And they did that, and then slowly we started having students from Cal State Long Beach come in. We had students come in from Cal State Northridge. We had students come in from Cal State Fresno. And then the crowd just kept getting bigger and bigger, and finally he ended up signing the document. So the point is that the administration will listen, but the administration is not interested in a couple complaints or 10 students getting together. The administration needs to see numbers. I mean, big numbers. So for example, with this professor, I mean, if there's a substantial amount of Asian American students who do not like that, getting together and letting the administration know that, hey, this is not right, this is serious, we want this subject to be taught properly, and we want you to put more emphasis on it. And there's 40, 50, 100, 200, depending on your student population. All these students want a better program. And the administration then has to listen. And you have to be resilient, because the administration wants to, they understand that students will protest for a while and then they have jobs in school, so they'll go away. But you have to be resilient in your actions. That's the one thing I've seen at Cal State. We're not, with this budget crisis, students are really resilient. Keep doing it, keep bugging the administration, and slowly they'll start listening. And then once they see the numbers increasing and the emphasis increasing, they have to listen and understand. So numbers speak.
I guess one added problem is that very often the administration will nod its head and tell you okay, but then they never do anything. So like you've already said, resilience is really important, because it's important to speak up and be bold with those actions, that they have to listen. So protest, occupy, chain down buildings. That might be an exaggeration. Two things that will catch their attention, because it's very easy for them to just say, okay, I hear it, we'll start this committee, and this committee will never start, and even if it does, it doesn't do anything because you're not holding them accountable. So accountability is really important.
I think that this is really where coalition building comes into play. So that's something that I also face at Loyola. If you want something like an Asian American Studies program, realistically, it's not enough just to have our community voicing for ourselves. We need to make these alliances and have people work as allies who are going to sit at the table for us and advocate for us. Because unless we build those coalitions, they're not going to listen to you. Yeah, something that I've heard from administration is that all the Asian American students can benefit from having an Asian American Studies program, but how is that going to benefit the larger community? So once they see interest from people who are outside of our ethnic or racial background is when people really start to question. So really be purposeful in making alliances and getting your story out there. And sharing your narratives. Also, when you have people who work within administration or within the staff of higher education who are also going to act as advocates or advisors for you, I think that could be really valuable as well.
Can I go? Or is there no time? It's okay.
Just two
Okay.
sentences.
2 or 3. All right, well, maybe it's like 7. So I think your question is really good. I think that we all identify kind of like similar things that we're looking for on our campus, but the approach and strategy has to be tailored to your specific campus, its population, its demographics, its needs. And so one thing I think is that's good to do is, if you've ever heard of a SWOT analysis, where it's strengths, weaknesses, which are internal, opportunities and threats, which are external. And so when you do that, I think it gives you like a little bit more clarity on how do we go from strategy, which is the planning, to actions, which are tactics. And it does tie in with what they're saying. We need allies, both of student variety, alumni variety, we need a big tent of all ethnicities. So like, we just need everybody, okay? But I think that the other thing is like you also need a balanced approach. So from our end as students, we do the grassroots kind of like mobilization, but when you have your allies in administration, that gives the top-down approach, and so you have both. And I think that involves identifying key stakeholders, people who have influence, setting up meetings if you are leaders of your organization, and just saying, hey, I'm the vice president or secretary or just member, I'm a student, I would like, to get advice on this issue. And the thing is, sometimes administration interest directly is against student interest, but sometimes it's just that they don't know. Even though they represent the students, they don't interact with students every day, and they don't know. They don't know that you want an Asian American Studies program. They don't know how strongly you feel about it, how the student organization has been working on it for a decade, because nobody's talked to them. And so I think that even in the battle time, but as well as in the peace time, we need to be building the bridges with potential allies.
Thank you for those words, Michael. As we wrap up this panel, I want to remind everyone, even those who are live streaming this right now, the conversation doesn't end here. It's talking to people outside of this room, even back at home, your friends, your community, your boards. So definitely please be mindful that you don't have to just end it here. And definitely approach us afterwards, during lunch or another time period during the workshops even. But talk to your fellow members here, just because each of you have a story of your own. And if you want to reach out to ICASU or the White House Office of Public Engagement, or even the White House on Asian American Pacific Islanders, do reach out to them, because they can give you maybe some comments on what you're trying to do, or even find you a resource that you never knew was there. So I want to thank the White House Office of Public Engagement, as well as the White House of Asian American Pacific Islanders, for just bringing us all together in this one room. And it's great for us to have this chance. And I want to thank the panelists as well as the audience members out there. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, June, and thank you to all the panelists for being, well, one, for being so impressive, and also so effective, and thank you for sharing your stories and like I said, best practices.